We support this bill.
I call the honourable member John Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's quite interesting to reflect that on the right-hand side of the House, as I stand here, there hasn't been a speaker this afternoon on this bill who wasn't a list member of Parliament. And as I've stood there listening to what they're saying, what I've perceived is a disconnect between the community that electorate MPs represent and their detachment from the community in New Zealand that they purport to represent. And I would simply say to the last speaker, I'm deeply disappointed that Winston Peters wasn't available to take the slot this afternoon, because he made a really tremendous contribution to the development of this legislation. And I don't recall the last speaker being in the committee discussing the subject at all. And particularly I felt that the last speaker misunderstood the intent and the value of the legislation when he said its most desirable quality was for the bank to be able to dismiss directors. The point of this legislation, sir, is that it enables the bank to vet directors before they arrive. And that is a much more important point, because we're trying to stop people getting into the House before we run into trouble. Nothing as an MP in the last 7 years has caused me greater anguish than listening to people in my community who've come into my office who've said, I've lost my life savings because I took advice from people like Masterton Money Managers, and their whole retirement savings were lost. And that is something that I felt very deeply about. And I'm very pleased that our government has been able to bring this legislation to Parliament and process it through the FEC committee in relatively very fast time. I think that Mr. Parker was also critical of the pace at which the economy was moving, but I draw his attention to a document that I noticed this afternoon in Copperfields. It comes from the Parliamentary Library, it's a research paper, and it sets out trends in the economy. And it points out that economic growth is averaging 1.7% in 10-11, 11-12, and they go on to say the rate of economic growth in the March 12 quarter exceeded expectations, with the economy expanding by 1.1% over the quarter. The main contributors to growth came from manufacturing, business, services and agricultural industries, all things that employ people in this economy. If you look at unemployment, it's consistent at around 6.6%, 6.7%. If you look at inflation, it's dropped from 4.5% to 1.6%. If you look at interest rates, they've dropped from 2.65% in 10-11 to 2.61% in 11-12. And when we come to the list member for Christchurch, or wherever it was, that used to be an electorate member of Parliament, but his electorate tipped him out, Mr. Cosgrove, I think his name is. Why did they tip him out? Because as Deputy Minister of Finance, he was responsible for losing $7 billion of taxpayers' money. That's why they got rid of him. Mr. Speaker, this bill is another step in the government's program to restore investor confidence in capital markets. That's what this bill is about. And in the context of the global financial crisis, the collapse of finance companies, this bill at least enables the Reserve Bank to have much stronger powers to deal with non-bank deposit taking. That's anybody who isn't a bank. Mr. Speaker, the non-bank deposit takers bill completes several years of work to tighten up regulations of the sector. And from 2006, deposits of about $8.6 billion were put at risk by financial industry failures. Some of the directors are actually in my electorate, and I know them personally. I know they tried to do a good job, but they didn't, and so a key focus of the government over the past 3.5 years has been supporting measures to ensure the right protections are in place to maintain and build investor confidence. So what have we done? We've established a one-shop financial markets authority with a sharper focus on enforcing the law. We've tightened up oversight of those working in the financial market sector by putting in a new regime for financial advisors, requiring licensing of trustees and auditors and strengthening disclosure requirements. We've rewritten the 33-year-old securities law leading to the Financial Markets Conduct Bill. We're working on improving financial literacy, we're cracking down on loan sharks, and we're combating anti-competitive behaviour such as price fixing. Mr. Speaker, it requires non-bank deposit takers to be licensed by the Reserve Bank when deciding whether to grant a licence, and the bank is required to satisfy itself that an applicant can comply with the sort of prudential requirements that you would find of a trading bank or require in a trading bank. All directors must be suitably vetted in advance by the Reserve Bank, and I think that by doing that we'll eliminate a whole lot of people from the governance structures of financial markets who are beyond their competence to be involved with. I think the bill will also allow the Reserve Bank to de-license non-bank deposit takers in prescribed situations. Mr. Speaker, I think this is a particularly good piece of legislation. It's really important for people in my electorate, my constituents, who want to invest their money safely without risk of losing it. And with that view, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill unreservedly. Thank you.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker,